What possibly might not have an embedded system here? Scarecrow. Yeah, what else? Syringe. What else? So to cut a long story short, actually everything has an embedded system here. I'll just go with one example here, Scarecrow. A colleague of mine who is a director of an agricultural college has got some hybrid fields. He told us, Kavi, why can't your students build me a Scarecrow which is automated? I'm paying on 1 acre, I'm paying 4 buys to shoo away birds, right? And it cost me very much. It's costing me 16,000 rupees a month to keep them in service. If you can build me a machine, it will be great. And this building a machine like that is not rocket science. It just needs somebody, a student with a BTech project or whatever, to incubate this idea, right? And actually go and do it. But our BTech students and our BE students are not inclined to thinking in terms of taking a real problem and solving it. They're inclined to either getting a solved problem and presenting it, or they're inclined to do a library database, or they're inclined to do something which kind of is not really a challenge. And it's very sad, because the first thing that I ask students who come for interview to IIT is, what did you do in your BTech project or your BE project? From that we get a measure of what the guy is worth or girl is worth. Right? Does it have some substance? Have they studied? It's an opportunity for you to really discover your own subject by building an artifact in that area. Okay, so it's sad that not more people your age, dynamic with the energy, with the training and so on, are actually solving real problems. And if someone solved it nicely, you have a customer, right? And you can refine it and take it to the next level and stuff like that. And a lot of interesting products begin like the seed is a little project that you did and so on. So that leads to my next part of the talk, which is this Yantra project. But I'll talk to you a little bit about what we've done here. How much time do I have, by the way? So what is happening here is, see, there's a company which was incubated by Professor Ramamritam at IIT called Agrocom. What Agrocom does is quite interesting. They deploy mini weather stations in farms, and each weather station has got a radius of about 2 kilometers where it's active, and they monitor temperature, humidity, leaf wetness and stuff like that. And based on algorithms, they can send farmers an SMS predicting the pest attacks and crop diseases. Because each crop disease has a signature of what kind of situation leads to it, right? In terms of temperature change and humidity change and so on. So the farmer, before the pest attack becomes so bad that he has to spray it a hell of a lot, can very early spray just a little bit and conserve his resources, right? So very interesting ideas. And that's just an idea which was implemented, and it worked pretty well. And medicine has got so much embedded systems. In fact, healthcare is a huge embedded systems opportunity, right? Still waiting to be exploited. Like TCS is just trying to commercialize a product developed at IIT, which is called a health locket. Has anybody heard of it here? Health locket? It's a small locket here like this, which is constantly monitoring your heart action, and it's like an ECG machine, right? And it's also monitoring whether your ECG graph, if you like, is within a healthy parameter. As soon as something is going wrong, it sends an SMS to your doctor. Okay? So this has actually been deployed, right? Actually been deployed. So I'm saying that world is full of interesting opportunities like that, right? Where you can actually build useful products. And what's happening is that this might not have been possible a few years ago, but technology is making it possible. How many of you have heard of the Raspberry Pi, for instance? Raspberry Pi, not the eating stuff, the computer. Okay, one of the inventors of this is Alan Mycroft, who's a professor in Cambridge. He visited our labs last week, and we plan to buy a lot of these little devices, right? Now, what the Raspberry Pi is that it's a full-fledged computer on a circuit board that big, right? The board is like that. The board is there because all the ports for putting your USB connection and your power connection and all that are big, right? But the heart of the action is a small 1 centimeter square chip, which is the entire computer, right, on that thing. and that runs Linux, which is an operating system. So if you want a computer, you just plug a keyboard into it through the USB. You plug a screen. It's got an HDMI port there, right? HDMI port for screen, USB for keyboard. You have a multiplexer there, so you have keyboard, mouse, whatever you want. And your entire computer is this, right? And that costs 2,000 rupees. 2,000 rupees. Now, if I told you that I can sell you a computer for 2,000 rupees, right, you can have some brilliant ideas as to how to use that machine, embedded in some device somewhere or the other, which would not have been possible even 3, 4, 5 years ago. And they've also not done rocket science to make it, okay. What they've done is that Broadcom is a company in the UK. These guys wanted to build a cheap computer for the UK school system, so that kids can program a computer and get to know about it and stuff like that. So they built all this thing around one chip which has an embedded graphics processor and CPU. Everything is on this chip. And quite interestingly, this chip has been designed for the set-top box market. Right? So set-top box market means that it's very highly graphics enabled. So you get 3D graphics on that. Right? So 2,000 rupee machine where you got great 3D graphics and high-speed computing and stuff like that. Now think of the things that you can build out of it. Devices of various kinds. And all you have to do is that you don't have to build any hardware. You just program in C or Java or what have you. It's a Linux box basically on a thing that big. I'm sure you can think of many, many products which you can build out of that. Right? So that's how I would like to encourage you to think. Computers to embedded and network SoCs. SoC is a system on a chip. Another instance of a system on a chip is the A6 processor which Apple built for its iPads. Right? So all the iPhones, iPads, everything has the same thing. An A6 processor inside which is doing all the work. Graphics, computing, everything basically. Right? Music processing, sab kuch. Which is the reason why you can buy these things at this very competitive cost nowadays. IIT is running this project called Akash. Have you heard of Akash? Okay. That everybody's heard of. Professor Phatak, long may he live, has plans to distribute 2 million of these things this year. Right? To school children across the country and engineering students and stuff like that. Just imagine the impact that can have. The amount of trees you can save because you don't have to print books. One Akash tablet can take your entire textbooks and syllabus. So that's all that needs to go in your bag. Right? So what made it happen? Just someone has to get the idea that, hey, technology is able to do this. Can't we do this? Right? And then you get some interesting answers. And in the process, each Akash tablet is going to save a lot of trees for us, by the way. Right? And it's going to reduce the burden on my child's back. Plus he can learn programming. Plus he can have access to YouTube and the internet all the time. I don't know whether that's a good thing, but I have problems with my daughter, right? How do you control mobile phone access to kids without them feeling that you've killed them or murdered them or something like that? It's a challenge, right? But I feel that the youngsters will cope with all these things as time goes on. Right? So I won't go into details of this. I've told you enough about this, but these new devices in embedded systems, you measure them and you compare them differently. You compare them in terms of unit cost, size, performance, power, time to prototype, time to market. I won't go into the details of this, otherwise it will sound like an embedded systems class. Right? But just to give you an example of, can you think of the number of computers in a car? Any guesses? A high-end car, not this old jalopy at the moment, but this is just a... How many computers are there in the modern cars, for instance, embedded computers? I'll start. One for the engine control unit. What else? Brake, anti-lock braking system. AC controller. Steering, steer-by-wire. Audio systems. Airbag deployment. Pardon? Navigation system. Yeah, everybody likes cars here, it seems. Vento mein kya mil raha hai aajkal? Wo naya Audi mein kya mil raha hai? Vagera, vagera. So it shows you all the sorts of electronics which goes in cars. And cars are no different from anything else in the market now because everybody is a consumer of embedded systems, right? And we've been looking at, say you have the Nano, right? We asked ourselves the question, why can't you take a Galaxy Tab and make that the computer which does all the work in the car? It's not only the dashboard, the display and all that, but it's also controlling the engine and the battery and the electronics and the navigation and so on. Right? It can be done, nothing stopping us. Increasingly so you can do it. So we've done some interesting work on building a real-time operating system for, say, nuclear reactors, where on the same machine you want to run safety critical and non-safety critical software or programs or applications or whatever it is, right? So this is the kind of research questions that you ask yourself and you actually solve those problems, and we actually delivered it to BRC. Now, these are the sorts of research questions that nobody is stopping you from asking, and you can come up maybe with interesting questions that you can answer. Okay. So there are lots of opportunities. About almost 20% of the value of a car nowadays is electronics, and where I see electronics, I don't see chips and hardware and all that. It is all programming. A car has got millions of lines of code which are running everything at the moment. So it's like a software programming platform actually. And as you see the way cars are evolving, they are becoming like nodes on a network which are talking to each other, right? So they will do, they'll put them in, like in the US you already have a project called Caltrans, right? Where cars, as soon as they get onto a highway, they are automatically maintaining a safety distance from each other. So you can just put it into autopilot and read the newspaper, right? And when your exit comes, you get off the highway, right? That way the cars are getting similar properties to trains, where you can maximize the capacity or the bandwidth of a highway by keeping cars much closer apart than you could otherwise, by using, right, the computers and these kind of controllers. So in our ERTS, this Embedded in Real-Time Systems Lab at IIT Bombay, we do a fair amount of projects. Our teaching is the Embedded Systems course. I'll come to E-Yantra. And the research is real-time systems, educational robotics, and lots of projects that we've done for various agencies. I'll just share with you quickly the sorts of things that we've done to show you opportunities just that exist out there for you to pick up if you want, right? This we did with the Simulator Development Division at Hyderabad. So the army spends a lot of money on ammunition in training its soldiers, right? So this is an interesting thing where you have wall-sized display and you have these instrumented guns, right, with a small laser pointer there. So you have virtual animation here. Right? So you have this real-time animation of a column of soldiers going on a Kashmiri landscape, and from time to time a militant will jump up from behind a bush to take a pot shot at you. And if you don't point and shoot in the right time, you're dead. Okay. And they had this problem where each of the guns had this compressed air line to give them recoil, and they had a data cable with which they would get the data to see where the gun is pointing and so on. And it was very cumbersome. So we took that and we turned that into a tetherless. Yeah? Short questions. Sure. Right? So we turned this into a tetherless recoil system. Right, where most of the work actually was to put some kind of compressed gas into the magazine. So when you took a shot, it would give you that recoil, which is quite important. And you didn't have a cable anymore, right? So that kind of stuff. We are building a radio sound for the army, which is a weather station that goes up, where before you fire a gun, right, you have to measure what the temperature, pressure, wind speed is in all the various layers of the atmosphere. And you feed that into your gun to kind of to calibrate it nicely, and so on. And I'm going to just, I had a lot of slides which I'm just going to plug this right now, which is E-Yantra, okay, which is our answer to how we are going to mobilize the country to take advantage of these kind of opportunities which are happening, right? And we have various patras and recipients of this kind of attention here, including Professor Salgaonkar, who's here. And so you have a local resident who can explain to you more of this kind of stuff that we are going. So we thought, future society is going to be networked, computerized and all that. We need to build and operate and service these kind of systems, and every child needs to be equipped with knowledge, and every young engineer needs to be able to build machines to address these kind of problems that you have around in society. Opportunities in farming, in healthcare, in consumer goods and all that kind of stuff. Like for instance, why doesn't someone build a jhadu katka machine, you know? Buys are very hard to get nowadays. And it's not rocket science. But it just needs somebody with a tinkering mentality to experiment with various materials and build one. And I would buy it for about 10,000 rupees. Maybe even 20,000 rupees. Right? Or a washing machine. You know, a small footprint dishwashing machine. At the moment you get huge things like that. And you know, what is the price of space in Bombay? You don't get that much space. You have a washing machine, you can't afford to have a dishwashing machine also. You won't have space to stand in the kitchen. Right? So, who is there to build these things? Right? You guys need to do it. Okay. So, education has to become more experiential. So, that's the basis on which we founded this project, where we have e-yantra, through which we found a lot of success in transferring our knowledge about how to build these kind of solutions using our robots and all that. Which we invented in our lab, and now we are transferring that to lots of colleges. We are helping colleges to set up robotic labs, and I'm very happy to say that you've pioneered this along with us by your Vice Chancellor being very kind to give us access to your colleges. And because of that, we were surprised that out of 19 colleges which first came forward, 16 are participating to actually build a robotic lab on campus, to put the investment down and do everything which is required. And the way we are doing it is through teachers also taking part, and with students we are anyway having a big robotic competition that we run in the year, and we give them projects and internships and all that. But what's heartening to see is that the teachers are coming forward, 4 from each college, to participate in a robotic competition, right? Where they will be sort of taught how to sort of go through the entire process, with which they can take ownership of the knowledge that we've developed in our lab. And then you have the opportunity then in the colleges to do some very interesting projects after that. And we help you with that also. Okay? So we have workshops and robotic teacher competitions for the teachers also. And that's great fun. And our goal is to trigger a robotic revolution by doing all these things. Setting up labs, conducting workshops and all this kind of stuff. This is the basis of our intervention, a nice low-cost robot that we developed, right, on which we have a lot of software running, a lot of projects which you can build on and stuff like that, right, which is quite exciting. And you can use it in a lot of courses. What is more important is that we are trying to get students to think of themselves as people who can solve real problems and perhaps build products and all that, and that highly motivates them. NIT Jalandhar, for instance, built a room cleaning robot which they deployed in a barber shop. So they took a vacuum cleaner and made it go around the barber shop picking up all the hair like this, right? Using the same technology as we do in our projects and stuff like that. So it was quite heartening to see. This is our robotic lab, what it looks like. And our portal. So we have a project called NME ICT, which has got, which is actually funding us. I won't go into details of all this, but this is the competition registrations that we've had from all over the country, right? When we opened our portal, 6,000 registrations, and if we didn't close it, it would easily go to about 12 or even 18,000. But we capped it, and we have now about 500 students working as 131 teams, right, competing in this competition, where we give them the robots, we give them the problem statement, and they compete. And the problem statements are drawn from real life, like pothole filling robot, room cleaning robot, white line following robot, and pick and place robot. So 4 themes and 130 teams taking part remotely. And we are gratified to see the kind of response. How students have been remotely able to learn all the skills and compete. Previously, we needed to give them a 2-day workshop to pass on the gyan of how to do the robotic programming. Then we decided this is not scalable. So we give them a DVD now with the 2 days worth of lectures and assignments and all that. And they have actually been able to learn on their own remotely and compete in the competition and come up with examples which are as good as, if not better than, what our students at IIT could do. And that's been an eye-opener, and it's terribly exciting because we are in the process identifying talent out there in the country which I'd like to pull to us to do MTechs and PhDs and stuff like that. Okay, so that's the very important role of what is happening. Our Facebook page, 1962 likes, and we put up all the information there and stuff like that. We have a channel on YouTube. See, even old guys like us are learning how to use social media and stuff like this. Majburan, karna padta hai, as they say. And lots of video views. All the projects which happened have a video, source code, documentation, everything on the portal, which you can pick up and actually build on. The robot you can buy in the market. It's a commodity item now, right? And do everything. This was the first lot of robots that we distributed to colleges a couple of years ago. And I'm going to stop here actually. So, your own research, Professor Krithi just gave you a couple of slides on that, right? And the wonderful thing is that India has such a vast number of resources, and it's got an even vaster number of opportunities going under the label of problems, right? You have endless number of interesting problems to solve. We are rich in that. So you should take the opportunity. Problem is nothing but the gap between what we want and what we have, Edward de Bono. And the significant problems we face cannot be solved at the same level of thinking we were at when we created them. So this is another lecture which I won't go into, but I just want to leave these points as a teaser here. There's a bit on TRIZ which I wanted to discuss, which I won't discuss here. But typically a product goes in this kind of thing where you conceptualize it, it rapidly grows in answering a lot of requirements, it matures, and then it's come for retirement. I mean, it's lived its time. Okay, this could be the human curve also of usefulness or whatever it is. And at this point, right, either the product dies, or you have to think of a new way to interpret it, right, to take it to the next level. Right, so you have two fundamental limit of capability of a product. Then at this point, you either change the target or change the system and take it to the next level like this. So I'm just going to leave these as teasers with you and wind up actually. Here's an example. Emery Lovins, right, who's an interesting guy, he's the director of Rocky Mountain Institute, showed how you can design a vehicle which can give you 42 kilometers a liter, an SUV, right, by giving it a carbon fiber body. That means you would greatly reduce the weight, right? You give it a chassis which is built like an aircraft fuselage. The chassis that we have nowadays is like a tray. You have a tray like this, uske upar you keep a dabba, right? Which is most cars nowadays. You just build it like an aircraft fuselage. It's a hung kind of chassis, like a bridge. Okay, then you can have much more lightweight structures. Have steer-by-wire, that means you do away with the rack and pinion steering and all the heavy metal that goes with that. So, and you have a hybrid engine. And because your car is very light, you need a very light engine now, small engine. You need a very light braking system. You need everything very light. Be able to anticipate markets now, before they happen. Right? You should be thinking not about doing something which is relevant right now. You should be thinking where this technology is kind of, this need is going to converge in about a few years' time here. So before that need actually arises, let me think of some ideas. Minimal cost to the environment.